Hi there and welcome to a quick video from me, the History Tutor. In this video we're looking at Elizabeth topic for AQA and we're going to be looking at Mary Queen of Scots and we're going to be writing an account about how she was a problem. Okay, so in this video we're going to quickly revise our knowledge on Mary Queen of Scots, rebellions and all the problems she causes for Elizabeth, and we're going to write an account. Now people find this question tricky, but I'm going to talk you through how it can really be quite easy and get you lots of marks in the exam. But firstly, turn to my revision guide pages on Mary Queen of Scots, find the question to work through, and we're going to have a quick quiz on Mary Queen of Scots. Okay, so here we are, 8 simple questions about Mary Queen of Scots. So have a look to revision guide pages about rebellions and Mary Queen of Scots and see if you can fill in the answers here and have a bit of revision of your knowledge. So pause me now and away you go. Okay, so here are the answers then. So which rebellion took place in 1569? Well, it's the Northern Rebellion, of course, and this was the real only big significant rebellion that took place with Mary Queen of Scots. So Norfolk was going to be put on the throne and Mary was going to be queen. The Catholics were going to take over again, but Elizabeth just about managed to stop the rebellion. So question number 2, which nobleman was to marry Mary Queen of Scots from the Northern Rebellion? Well, it was Norfolk, as I've already talked about. Which Northern Earls organised the army to overthrow Elizabeth during the Northern Rebellion? You've got Westmoreland and Northumberland, and obviously they felt they were a bit ostracised from court as well as being Catholic and supporting Mary. They didn't like Elizabeth. They felt Northern Earls were not part of the court system. Where did they host a mass to celebrate their sort of Catholic faith during the Northern Rebellion? You've got Durham Cathedral. What was Norfolk's punishment for Northern Rebellion? Well, he's put in a tower for 10 months and then 10 months under house arrest. But unfortunately, he did carry on plotting. Something else happened to him. So question number 6, who plotted to overthrow Elizabeth in 1571? She got Ridolfi. So we've had the papal bull in 1570 to excommunicate Elizabeth and make it the duty of Catholics to remove Elizabeth. So Ridolfi makes his plot to overthrow Elizabeth, have her killed, put Norfolk on the throne, but it fails. He's caught by the spy system. And of course, Norfolk was punished for the Ridolfi plot by being executed. He was involved in it. And there are lots of other plots as well. There are 4 plots in general about putting Mary Queen of Scots on the throne. You've got the Northern Rebellion we talked about, Ridolfi plot, you've got the Throckmorton plot, and then finally the Babington plot, where she's famously caught with the notes in code in the beer barrels and she's executed. And, you know, the line of story goes that supposedly then Philip invades to become king and we have the Spanish Armada. So here's our question then. Write an account of the ways in which Mary Queen of Scots caused problems for Elizabeth. Now be aware, I've just put Elizabeth, but a much more interesting question might be, or slightly more challenging, might be Elizabethan England. And you'd have to talk about all different groups of people in England. But for Elizabeth, this should be a very straightforward question. So what skills do you need, though, to answer this type of question? Many of you are a little bit uncertain about the writing account question. If you've not seen me talk about these questions before, then here's an opportunity to really have a think about it and work out the success criteria for the question. So pause now and have a think about the skills you think you need to show to be successful with this question. How many paragraphs? Are you explaining? Are you describing? What sort of skills are you going to show? Okay, well, you're going to explain in this question. It's 8 marks. Descriptions normally are 4 marks in AQA. 8 marks suggests we've got to show higher skills. So we've got to explain in peel paragraphs. So don't think about this as a write an account question. Think about this as an explain question. Explain the ways in which Mary Queen of Scots caused problem for Elizabeth. That's the best way of thinking about this. There is a small element of story writing you might have got from the write an account phrase, which is you need to give an example and then the consequence of this. So the example of the problem Elizabeth faced due to Mary, and then the consequence of it. So you go example, consequence. You can do this 2 ways for 6 marks. So give 2 problems and the consequence for 6 marks in 2 little P paragraphs. If you want to go a bit further and do a furthermore and show a bit more depth and analysis, then do 2 peel paragraphs for 8 marks. So let's do some planning now, shall we? So we want to give some examples of Mary Queen of Scots actions and then the problems these cause. So obviously you've got Mary arriving, you've got Mary's rebellions and plots, to list some examples, and how are those causing problems for Elizabeth? So look through your notes now, pause now, and fill in a plan. Okay, so first I've got rebellions then. So Northern Rebellion and plots like Babington plot. And obviously this caused problems as they planned to kill Elizabeth and with support from the nobles, and they obviously overthrow Elizabeth. This led to a split in court, and Elizabeth had a court crisis to manage with people, Catholics supporting Mary, like Norfolk, and other people supporting Elizabeth. Got the Babington plot. there was clear evidence that Mary wanted to kill Elizabeth. So, Elizabeth then has a crisis decision. She has to decide to execute Mary. This obviously led to the Spanish Armada. Catholics supported Mary and her rebellions. So Elizabeth then has a crisis of managing the Catholics in the country, and she has to punish Catholics for supporting Mary. This leads to a failure of her middle way. So you might have seen my other videos where I've talked about things like marriage and rebellions and other videos. We need to remember that marriage, rebellions, Mary Queen of Scots, religion, they're all interconnected, and you can use all of them in the various questions that you'll set. So how do we write our answer then? So we want to say a point, evidence, explain, answer. So we want to repeat the question back, open up an argument. So one way that Mary caused problems for Elizabeth was that she caused a religious problem. She introduced rebellions and split the nation. Okay, so giving an idea. Then support that with an action of Mary's, something she did or others did to support her. Then explain how this caused problems for Elizabeth. Explain the impact. If you can think of it, then do a furthermore and try and give a wider link to this, how it led to other ideas, this argument you're setting up. So let's work through an idea together, shall we? So we need to set up our argument first of all. We need to make a point. So find this question in your revision guide if you haven't already. If you haven't got my revision guide, firstly, why not? But secondly, you can just get a piece of paper and work through this one. So make an opening point. So one way that Mary caused problems to Elizabeth was that, and then set up your argument. So pause me now and set up an argument. Okay, so I've gone for plots and rebellions, and I've said that one way that Mary caused problems to Elizabeth was that she caused plots and rebellions against Elizabeth. Now, we need some evidence then, so we can just simply list some of these plots and rebellions, perhaps. For example, give an idea. I'm probably going to talk about the Northern Rebellion a little bit, so we can start off with that one if you want to follow what I'm doing. Okay, so I've said, for example, Mary arrived in 1568, and straight away Catholics started to plot to put her on the throne, and you could link a bit to Northern Rebellion there if you wanted to. Now explain, how did this cause a problem for Elizabeth? What did senior nobles start to do? How did rebellions develop? Give some impact knowledge. Okay, so I've said this caused problems for Elizabeth because some senior nobles like Norfolk led rebellions to kill and overthrow Elizabeth. The Northern Rebellion started in 1569 with an army of 4,000 rebels that planned to kill Elizabeth and make Mary Queen, with Norfolk as husband. After this, rebellion was crushed, and three more major plots developed to make Mary Queen: the Rodolphi plot, Throckmorton plot, and Babington plot. Okay, so we've got obviously the crisis set out there with some knowledge that she faced a major rebellion, and that's the one problem. But is there a furthermore? Is there a long-term problem with plots and what she has to do to solve Mary? If you went long-term, you could go to the Babington plot and think about the consequences of the Babington plot, which are pretty significant, aren't they? So pause now and see if you can do a furthermore. So I've said, furthermore, this led to a long-term problem for Elizabeth, as after the Babington plot, it was clear Mary had to be executed. But after Mary was executed in 1587, Elizabeth had the problem with the Spanish planning their Armada to invade England to remove Elizabeth as queen. So I can link all the way to the Spanish Armada and foreign policy, which is a pretty, I must say, for higher candidates, is a pretty standard response you'll see a link towards for the long-term impact. Now, let's try a second one yourself. Have a look at the writing frame then, see if you can answer a question yourself. I'd say one of the easiest thing to do is talk about religious middle way being destroyed. Just fairly obvious, and the impact's obvious as well, that Elizabeth's religious policy is fairly doomed by the Catholic actions. So see if you can write yourself a paragraph on that now. Okay, so here's what I said. Another way that Mary caused problems to Elizabeth was that her rebellions destroyed Elizabeth's middle way. For example, Mary had a large amount of Catholic support in the Northern Rebellion and Rodolphi plot with the support of the Pope via the papal bull. This caused problems for Elizabeth because she was forced to punish Catholics for supporting Mary and the papal bull by banning confessions, increasing recusancy fines, and by the 1580s, hiding a priest was punishable by death. Furthermore, by the 1580s and 90s, the Puritans gained increased confidence due to the punishment of Catholics. For instance, Brown and Greenwood set up their own Puritan church in London, allowing increased amounts of preaching, and obviously they were executed for that, weren't they? Elizabeth therefore has problems coming out of the Mary Queen of Scots arrival. I haven't even talked about arguments with Parliament. That's another one you could talk about, that she has a falling out with Parliament and the nobles. Perhaps if you did in your first paragraph falling out with nobles, you could do a furthermore with falling out with Parliament about the arrival of Mary Queen of Scots. Hopefully that gives you lots of food for thought. Okay, well, if you found that useful, do have a look at my revision guide. I've got some example pages here you can see from my revision guide, and you can find this on my Amazon channel, links for that in the YouTube video information. Also, I have lots more revision guides you may find useful. But if you don't want to spend, I've got lots of free videos, so do subscribe to my channel for lots of other help as well. Well, I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye for now.